other things, but always and naturally and absolutely. So this was in connection to Sean Scully's work, and I instantly thought, well, it's quite interesting way of looking at beauty and the forms, reducing everything down to squares and seeing the beauty within. So my work followed on from that. So I looked at my interest in blues music, and this is Booker White's Fixing to Die Blues. So the song itself is quite sad. It's a blues song. And this particular painting was on a very small canvas. It was probably about yay big. And the dimensions to the square were worked out by how long the song was. So if it was 2.5 minutes long, it was 2.5 centimetres by 2.5 centimetres. And I continued that for 9 songs. I did a series of 9 songs. All had various shades and tones of blue based on my feeling of blue. That makes sense. The sort of synesthesia, the sort of I feel kind of blue today, but what kind of blue do I feel? This particular one, I imagine, was sort of blue, but could be quite nice. I don't know. There were darker ones, don't worry. So the next one was Anna Bontamp's poem Southern Mansion from 1922. So I continued my interest in African American culture. It's not just jazz, it's not just blues. It was a movement called the Harlem Renaissance, which was literature, which was mostly poetry. They were part of the civil rights movement as well in the in 50s, 60s, 70s. But they predominantly made work in the 20s. And this again was a series of work that ran through quite a lot of different attempts at trying to replicate and associate shapes with language. So Southern Mansion was not a very long poem, but this isn't all of it. So it was me trying to make structures and movement and the idea of collectives, segregation, all those sorts of things. Just thinking about shapes, language, and the association that would mean. That would happen. And then later on, the sensitivity of the subject that I was dealing with sort of made me think about actually using figurative elements. So this is Billie Holiday, aka Eleanor Fagan, Verve and Lyncham, which was mostly about the song Strange Fruit from 1939. This was an intended screen print that I actually did make, but unfortunately my ruthlessness in second year, third year and fourth year meant that everything that I made from that period was either thrown away or just destroyed in another form. And this, I don't know if anybody knows about Strange Fruit, the song, but it's a pretty sad song. And the connection, the association with people and the sort of composite images. And so this is what I created and sort of started to think, this was upon reflection. This wasn't what I was thinking about now when I was making it. This is what I was thinking about when I was looking through this work for this presentation. Is that I thought about Andy Warhol's Death and Disaster series and the whole idea of screen printing as a process and the sort of slippages meaning things. And so when I was doing this work with screen printing, with slippages that would cut off the heads of these lynched people. Those sort of intentional, formal motifs that I started to make. And the sensitivity was sort of uncomfortable towards the end. There was sort of an idea when I had my tutorials, it was just like, why are you actually doing this? You know, is it just because, just because you're interested in African American culture? And so that sort of brought me to that whole conversation with the tutor at the end, where he just said, I think you should just collect lots of things. Because at the time I was just collecting lots of associative images with all these stories that were connected to blues music, to jazz, the creation of jazz, where there was the story of another guy who was trying to say that he was the sole creator of jazz and not the other historical ideas of jazz and how it was created. There was all these stories that I had in my mind that I was going to make work about. But more so than that, really the interest was just looking at lots of things. I'm interested in lots of different art. I look at everything I can. And what I will say is I'm never really narrow-minded in what I'm doing. If I'm painting, I'm not just going to look at painters. If I'm drawing, I'm not just going to look at drawing. So these pieces of work, however relevant, are sort of just artists that I was looking at the time, and Kerry James Marshall is a really interesting artist who does some really amazing paintings. John Baldessari, you may know. Nia Rausch, Gerhard Richter. Particular relevance for these two as well, I think, especially in the future of what I actually made. Luke Toymans and Margaret Kilgallen, particularly Margaret Kilgallen with her ideas of her interest in lots and lots of different things. She was interested in typography and letter forming, like the faux naive homemade signs by companies, like just doing their own thing because they couldn't afford a proper sign for their shop, that sort of thing. So it sort of brings me to my third year. So I've gone and had a great summer, spending most of my time at a computer scanning 2,000 photographs, having long conversations with my mum about her stories that go with photographs. I even scanned her vinyl collection. She has terrible taste in music, so it was really interesting to look at the fronts of vinyls and her sketchbooks. Now, that's an awful lot of information to just grasp, and pretty much in my third year when we had to do a dissertation, an Erasmus, I didn't really know what I was going to do with all that information. And first and foremost, I just had to write the dissertation. So I spent the first few months writing the dissertation, researching the dissertation, and then in the second term we went to Poland, and I was in the printmaking department. And this is a stone lithography series of horse's leg. I don't know if anyone speaks Polish here. I asked quite a lot of people if this was a rough translation of horse's leg, but I think it translates as horse leg. I'm not sure. So the idea of the process-based artist now. So lithography is a very strange and very long, laborious process that you start with drawing, and it looks like a drawing to start with, but then the continual process of printing on top of each other means that it starts to look more like a stencil. And there was a series, I did 3 series, and each series would get even more abstract as it went along. And this is the last group that I did. And as you can see, it sort of looks, the first one sort of looks, well, it's got no tonal variation anymore. But to get the tonal variation back, I had to scratch into the stone to get back the tone. So this was sort of my first piece of work where I started to think about how process would affect a piece of work. This sort of experimentation continued with the reactions to, well, I now really do actually need to make some work based on all this information that I have at my disposal. And my mum's drawings are really interesting. So I thought I'd draw them. So this is drawings of drawings. So I went through my mum's drawings, redrawing them, simplifying them. These sort of forms overlapped, so looking at Joseph Alba's and how shapes make new shapes when they're overlapped with other shapes. All those sort of simplistic devices. So this is 27. So by the time that it was probably around 28, the last one where it was almost the whole page was covered. The first few were only like shapes of legs or mane or muzzle, very simple. As I said, I did 947 drawings throughout my 4th year, and they all varied in difficulty of doing a shape and then another shape. So this series is based on just a couple of photographs. This one in particular is titled 001, Horse's Muzzle, Grandad's Lead, and a hand holding a present. So taken from a couple of photographs, really, just looking at things that I was really interested in. This sort of developed. Again, 947 drawings, pretty much divided into probably about 12 or 13 series of drawings, each with different stages. So to make it make more sense for you, the filing cabinet included all the drawings and then all the stages. So this is Drawing Transfer Series number 4, and it was 3rd stage. So there's, so to explain, don't lose sight of this, it'll be explained. The first stage was the collage of my mum's drawing, so that was the horse's leg. The second stage was Elvis, and the third stage was me drawing the collage piece. So that's the collage, that's the drawing. And each series had a variety of different rules to it. Some were just shapes, some were colours, some were collage pieces, some were the replication of other motifs in the actual piece of work as well. And this, I say, this is number 10, and this was the best. This was my favourite, and that was number 27, and that was my least favourite.